Hello, I'm Deborah Malone, founder of The Internationalist and host of Internationalist Marketing TV. Today's guest is Sonsoles Gonzalez, founder of Better Not Younger. Sonsoles, what a wonderful pleasure to see you again. I think when we first spoke, you were building Better Not Younger as a challenger brand, and now you're doing something equally bold in that you're evolving your role into just founder, which is still a very important role. I'm just dying to talk to you about that journey in terms of the brand and leadership. So, welcome to the show. Welcome.
Thanks, Deborah. I'm so happy to see you again after all these years.
I know it's great, and you've done so well. So, all right, well, let's start with the founder role, okay? Because you've brought in a CEO, something many founders struggle deeply with. What helped you recognize like the time when it was right to make that shift?
You're right. It's a difficult decision to make. And for me, the clarity came from seeing this where the company was and also where I was as a person, as a leader. And, it's a very Better Than Younger is a purpose-led brand. It requires a lot of the founder story, and my own story was part of its soul. And after more than 7 years between creating the brand and managing the business, I realized that there was a need for more operational focus, more processes, and also detaching myself from that day-to-day operation helps me keep that vision going, keep communicating with the community, staying in touch, on top of what's going on in society with her. What are the changes in how she's perceiving the world? Because it's moving really, really fast. So I think letting the day-to-day operation be run by somebody else, it's hard to do, but there was a moment when I realized, okay, it's time to do it that way and for me to focus on continue to drive the vision of the brand.
I think that's very enlightened because I think that one of the things that happens to entrepreneurs, and you had the good fortune, of course, of working for corporations and having bigger support systems before you launched your own company. But I do think that entrepreneurs feel a responsibility sometimes to just be aware of everything. Like you really do believe that that's your job. You know, you have to know every aspect. And I do think that what you've just said is very, very refreshing because it is about where the brand can go and where what your customers are feeling. But Better Not Younger is still very much your vision. So I'll just ask, one other question just leads from that. So, how do you protect the brand soul, while giving someone else the operational parts?
I think the way I protect the brand soul is really through the message. And so I'm still very involved in the message. I recently recorded about 8 hours of content where I still discussed what's going on with our hair. Why are you seeing this? And how do our products work? And how do you combine the products? But I also spent a lot of time talking about how we feel in this moment of our lives. I even brought one of my daughters to the shoot to talk about intergenerational, discussions and how I can be a role model to her and to young women. So I think the content that I create and then they use is really the way I keep myself involved in the mission and really making sure that it doesn't move from that. And I think the new CEO and the team are very respectful of that. They believe very much this is a founder-led brand and the mission stays exactly the same. And it's just about, like I said before, when you separate yourself from all this day-to-day managing of problems, because that's what you're doing day in, day out, you sometimes lose the ability to think and to connect with the community and to inspire them again. So it's actually very refreshing, I think, both for me as well as for our audience to um, go back to our roots and be able to talk about our mission, our purpose more than ever.
That's wonderful. Also, it seems that I'm so delighted that you use the word community because it seems that more purpose-based brands now are moving in the direction of really not only building their community, but really listening to their community. And I think that, a lot of purpose is now has become more about activation and serving the people who are loyal to you. And I just find that very interesting, going from kind of message to real participation. And I
Right.
think that that's something quite interesting. Let me ask you though, because you've built some of the world's biggest hair care brands at Procter and Gamble and at L'Oreal. And then you chose to serve a segment of the industry that is largely ignored. Did you have to unlearn something from big
Yes,
company marketing to truly serve 40 plus women authentically?
very much. I think the first thing that I needed to learn is that the way I grew up in the marketing world where you identify a problem and you offer a solution. So, for example, you have dry hair, here's a problem. And or you create needs. Oh, you need longer lashes. So everybody needs longer lashes. I realized that with this audience, I was not going, the last thing I was going to do is tell her her problems in terms of nobody, unfortunately, still no women wants to hear, oh, you're old. Here's the problem that we're going to solve. Age sucks, and here's the thing. I wanted to stay away from this problem solution. She's very self-aware. She knows of her hair issues. She knows that her face may be sagging a little bit, but she doesn't want to be reminded. So it had to move to a conversation where, if anything, I wanted to be there to kind of help her along the way, but come across more as a, okay, we're on this together. I understand you, you understand me, we're a friend. And that is the first thing I need to learn. It's not identifying a problem and fixing it. It's kind of being there in that journey. The other thing I needed to learn was to rely a lot more on my own instincts because I had no data. There was no data about this customer. There was no product data. There was nothing. And so I wasn't going to generate tons of data either because that's very expensive. So I had to rely on my own instincts and my own sort of talking to friends and people in the community and realizing, okay, this is what I'm hearing, this is what I'm going to do. And that is completely different to the way we operate in big companies where every single decision you're backed by data, right? The last thing I'd say that I had to learn is manage ambiguity. When you're an entrepreneur, every single day is something new. You can't predict anything. You have no data to predict. And then on top of it is like you're starting from nothing. So there's not a system telling you, okay, here's a red flag, this happened in the past or whatever. No, you're learning as you go. And so if you're not a person that you're okay with that ambiguity and that shifting of directions every day, you probably shouldn't be an entrepreneur. And that I think was one of the things that after almost 30 years managing business in a very controlled way, P&G or L'Oreal, that was one of the biggest shifts in the way I had to operate, which is it's chaos, but it's okay.
Well, I would say that sometimes after chaos comes clarity. And I
For
think your
sure.
and I think your clarity is stepping back to do the right thing for the brand, which I do have to say is so courageous. In hindsight, though, what do you think is the most dangerous mistakes that brands make? Um, maybe even when they try to go after an older audience, or what are the mistakes they make?
Well, when talking to this audience about this audience specifically, I think the biggest mistake they make is that they don't understand, they don't realize the level of self-awareness that she has, the level of confidence that she has. She is no longer trying to prove anything to anybody. And so they go with the assumption that I can influence her easily on this or that with a hype or a magical transformation. And she's been around enough to know that that's probably BS. And so I think marketers fail in talking to her because they just assume that she's operating at the same level than maybe and I want to quote unquote an insecure 20-year-old. We are past that. And so that is the most difficult thing of talking to this customer, is that she is so smart about everything, about the choices, so confident that she is not gonna believe just anything you say. That I think it's the most important thing about her, is that she's happy. She's very happy in her own skin, and she's not gonna take anybody telling her otherwise.
Well, I think that's pretty remarkable, but it also creates a real marketing challenge because how do you market to her if she's self-aware and confident? I mean, I guess you just, lay out the benefits. Or are you finding that's not so easy? I mean, there are some brands now that are looking at older audiences, but it's not a big group. I think it's a little bigger than when you first started. But I bet marketing is challenging.
It's very challenging. It's very challenging because it's a very fine line where you can basically get her attention and she'll believe you, or she'll think you cross the line somehow. It's a very subtle line, and it's very hard. Sometimes I've been very surprised about the messages that really connect with her and the ones that don't. And sometimes, the simplest things are the ones that work the best. Tell me quickly, how my hair is going to look with more volume for longer. Don't overcomplicate the message and things like that. So the benefits are very important, but don't complicate it. Don't. Also, the other thing I've learned is that don't follow all the trends and all the hype. And you can go crazy in marketing today because there's so much being sort of told about, okay, this is the way you should do that. This is the opening, the first 5 seconds, the hook, the this, the that. And if you follow that out the door, you go crazy. So I think it's better just to be authentic and to know that you're not following any sort of, there's not a toolbox for this. You're inventing as you go. And learn and learn and continue to do it. Like I said, we have been very surprised about the advertising that has worked in the past. And sometimes it's the simplest thing, the simplest, communication of the benefit that has worked. I don't know if I answered your question really.
I think that
Why
you
is it?
have, because I think that this is not an easy group, and it's a very big group. It's also a very big group now, and as populations age, and now there's multiple generations, in a 40 plus or even a 50 plus era. I mean, there's multiples. Millennials, it's X, it's Boomer, goodness knows. I mean,
I
and
think
so
you
how
touched
do you? Are
something
they all
very
the same?
important,
Yeah.
because we tend to think, over 40 is all the same. Of course it isn't. A 40-year-old has nothing to do with a 50-year-old, it has nothing to do with a 60-year-old. So how do you segment all that is also very complicated. A 40-year-old is still showing some insecurities. She's starting to go through perimenopause and experiencing some changes, but they're not that definite, and she's still resisting perhaps some of these changes. A 60-year-old is, she's completely beyond that. But I think the important thing is there's a truth that connects everything, and that is how important hair is to her. No matter what age you're in, hair is the one thing about your persona, your face, whatever, that you still control, that you think you control to show that confidence that you feel, that you just feel attractive. I mean, we can't control if our cheeks are sagging. We can't. We can prevent it maybe from sagging more, but I can control if my hair looks good or looks awful one day. And that's going to make a huge difference during the day. And that is a universal truth for women at any age. But I think marketers think that, oh, older women, what do they care? I mean, they don't care or they're not into it, whatever. The contrary, I've talked to 80-year-old women that use our brand that say, wow, this changed my life. I was able to step out of the home, of my home, feeling great, or my husband noticed it. And they don't have gray hair anymore, but to them, they have gray hair because it was better than the day before. And hair has that magical power on women. It just has it. I mean, you're able to completely change how you feel if your hair changes. You change your hair and it changes you.
You're absolutely right. And you've always said that hair is deeply personal, and that one of the things that you wanted to do with the brand was to create trust with your community. Now, do you use some of your community as ambassadors for the
We
brand?
do, actually, we do. I mean, first of all, I think one of the things that is marketers tend to forget is women still get that they make decisions on what to use still based on what their friends or their mothers or their daughters say. That is the reality of the beauty industry, even more amongst this target. So that advocacy that comes from somebody that has used a product is priceless. You can't replace that with anything. So that is very important. And we do use some of our own most loyal consumers to help communicate this because the reviews that they leave are amazing, or we've even interviewed them and put their content on air. And they just talk about that, how it changed my life, how it improved my confidence. And nothing replaces that. And one of the things that I'm very proud about Better Not Younger is the products. Women really love the products. I was very, very choiceful about the technologies and the product because to be able to to have people repeat the purchase and truly believe was going to make a difference. I didn't want this to be a product that people bought once and throw it in the drawer somewhere and never, which is typical of the beauty industry. How many maybe lipsticks you have there that you haven't touched in a year or things like that. And so I think that plays a huge factor in believing in the brand, which is okay, this is really working. And I've seen a lot of people tell me, even my friend said, I cheated on you. I bought a different product. And you know what? I had to come back, things like that, because it works. So I think loyalty comes from that. I also think there's a level of loyalty to Better Not Younger that transcends that, which comes from this idea you understand me, you're talking to me. Even the name Better Not Younger has some, people smile when they hear it because it's like, okay, I get you. You understand me. We all know we're not young. We all know we're not going to get younger, but hell, we can get better. And I think that that has played a huge role in that sisterhood that women feel about Brandon at this age.
Also part of your own personal philosophy, because you've been very outspoken about trying to change society's narrative around aging, especially for women. Um, do, do you think that people are catching on to you? Do you think that other brands are evolving with that kind of education and that kind of sincerity? Or are they just changing some visuals to put some people with gray hair in them? I mean, that goes back to purpose again and authenticity.
I think there are a lot of new small brands emerging in this segment, but I don't think the big companies have yet truly embraced it. I think they're beginning to change the photos and things like that, but I don't think they're being really purposeful about it yet. I think they're watching the small closely, and they
Did it come back?
yeah, my computer just shut down all
Don't
of a
worry
sudden.
about it. Are you okay?
Yeah,
Let's
yeah, okay.
we'll just keep picking it up. We'll pick it up right there. Okay.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Don't worry. So why do you think that marketing or business more broadly, why do you think that they still struggle to reflect the reality of a 40 plus or 50 plus consumer?
I think companies in general are following the existing sort of timelines. Let me explain to you. I think companies still operate under the mindset that, you know, women's career peak maybe at 40, and then by 50, they should all be retiring. Or, I mean, think about it. How many women leaders you see in their 60s or 70s still active? You see a lot of men. So I think they're operating under this that timeline. They're also operating under the perception that, okay, beauty peaks at 30 and then starts declining at 40. So I think their systems are operating like that. They have, their product development is operating like that. Their marketing hires, they have 25-year-olds managing that. They don't have a lot of 40, 50, or 60-year-olds, if any, running anything. So I think that's part of it's kind of like it's happening because that's what they do day in, day out. That's what we do. And I don't see that. To me, the most when I see companies really having dedicated teams for this consumer in product development, in marketing, in research, then you're going to start seeing significant changes. Now, when is that going to happen? I don't know. I think the numbers will influence. So the more they see the demographics and they see, oh, okay, so the average age in the US is no longer 20, now it's 30, or things like that, they start realizing that they're missing out on important demographic. But I think there's structure to operate the way they're operating right now.
Yeah, it's what is it? Demographics are 18 to 49 if you're lucky. So, I think though that with population shifts, you're ahead of the game. I think you're going to see a lot of change, and I think you're going to be a brand that is even more powerful in 5 or 10 years, just based on the nature of demographic shifts itself. But you've
Well,
also, yeah, go ahead, go
no,
ahead.
I was
Sorry.
just going to
Yeah.
say, just in the past 6 months, I've seen this word longevity pop up everywhere. Everything is about longevity, whether to live longer or live better or stay healthy. And I think it's because everybody's recognizing, hey, we can live till 100. So we got to have better quality of life if we're going to live until 100. But I think people are realizing, okay, what am I going to do if I retire at 50? because a lot of people are being pushed out of companies at 50 or 55, whatever. And what am I going to do the next 40 years and things like that? So I think I think people are becoming more aware of this issue in terms of there's a second half of life that's very blurry right now in terms of what is our role in society, how do we market to these people, how do we keep them busy, you know? It used to be people retire 65, move to Florida, and that was it, right? Who wants to do that anymore, you know? I don't know that many people. I don't know. I don't. I have my friends at 55 and 60. They still want to run companies, they still want to run marathons, they still want to do other things, you know?
It's interesting that you say that, and I think you're absolutely right. And you've started from the beginning saying that Better Not Younger is a platform and a philosophy as much as it is a group of hair care products. And I just really think that you are so ahead of your time. My question, of course, still as founder, so where do you go from here? Are there other products? Are there is there more education? Is there different messaging? What's next?
I think we need to continue to drive this message, this purpose. I think we need to dive deeper into this community, and I think we need to find partners to do that with, you know? And by that, I mean other companies that are in the same space, you know, key opinion leaders that are in this space, you know. There's a lot of talk about menopause these days. So how do we connect with this group? So I think going deeper is probably the best thing that we can do for Better Not Younger. Now, in parallel to that, we continue to uncover, you know, new technologies, new things that we can bring to her. I don't want to bring just anything. I want to bring things that are really different and that can, you know, make us not be generic, you know. And that could be going into different categories for sure. But like I said, for me now is more education, going deeper, making everyone sort of like I like to say that, you know, what is it, the saying that rising tide lifts all boats? That's I think what we need to do because I don't think Better Know Younger wants to own the conversation. We need to normalize aging, and we all want to be a part of that normalization of aging. I can't do it alone. I need to do it with people that are believing in this as well, so that we are more and more and more people talking about it and becomes normal.
No, no, you make a very good point, and more so than that, that it's a very generous point. And I think it leads me to what I hope might be a question that kind of sums up a little bit of everything that we've talked about, and that's, if you're willing to share it, what might be the one belief that you now have about leadership, about branding, and about growth that you now hold that would have surprised you as a 30-year-old?
I would say for me, the most important thing is that in our 30s, in my 30s, I felt that doing more, doing everything, run, climb the ladder, you know, whatever it takes was the source of accomplishment and happiness and success. Nowadays, I feel that I can be a lot more fulfilled by being more intentional, by being more focused, and by being able to say no when I want to say no. That to be able to make choices that are right for me, that are healthy for me, you know, that you don't have to pursue everything and that you can be incredibly fulfilled by that empowerment. And then one other thing that I will say about it is that when we're young, I thought that there will come a day in my 60s when I would want to not do anything, you know? I realized that is so far from the truth, you know. I think retirement is one of the hardest things. And so I, what would have surprised me as a 30-year-old was to know that there was still, there would always be personal fulfillment in accomplishing things at every age, learning new things, creating new things, adapting, and that really did surprise me. Honestly, I thought it was going to be a, you know, crazy run up the ladder career and then relax, and it isn't. It's a lot more choiceful, but it doesn't stop.
Well, you are wonderfully honest about that. And I do just have to compliment you as someone with not only genuine leadership instincts, but a generosity about wanting to see the category grow, wanting to see women feel better about themselves. And that is just so extraordinary. I hope we can keep talking, particularly as the Internationalist does more with what we call Gen More, or this older generation that has more energy, more time, more need to be fulfilled, just that, and more money. But you know,
Right?
just
Absolutely.
it's been wonderful and talking again, but let's not let it go so long because I think there's so much more we can learn from you.
Absolutely. I love talking to you, and I think we're just scratching the surface when it comes to this generation. There's so much we can do and so much that will be done.
Wonderful. Well, on that level, I'll say talk to you soon.
Thank you.
The Internationalist focuses on the continual reinvention of marketing by highlighting inspirational marketers around the world and their ideas as they move the industry forward. Internationalist Marketing TV shares these perspectives through interviews and personal stories. Thanks so much for watching. If you find this kind of content helpful, please click like or subscribe. Again, thanks so much.